Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 987 just came out, and I have to say, Oda did it. He made me excited about the Scabbards. I did not think he'd be able to do it, at least in the span of, one chapter, but I was smiling from the start of this chapter till the end of this chapter. I was legitimately really excited to see everything the Scabbards did this chapter, and I think my respect for them as a group, and I think my general attachment towards them as a group definitely jumped up a notch over the course of this chapter. And I was talking at the end of chapter 986 that I didn't feel connected to them that much as a group. And it's not like anything specific happened this chapter that suddenly made me like, oh, you know what? I love these guys, I love the Straw Hats or something crazy like that. But it did help to see them in a moment where everything's kind of slowing down. They're getting their flashbacks. We are getting some reminders of the things that they have gone through and where they're coming from. And I want more, by the way. I want more flashbacks. I want more, not even just seeing what we've already known, getting images shown to us again of Oden tossing the Scabbards away, the Kaido versus Oden fight, the things we've already seen. I want the gaps filled in. I want to see Inuarashi, Nekomamushi, their fallout from the Oden situation, what got them at each other's throats in the first place that made them, lifelong enemies after the Oden situation. I want to see more of the Scabbard story, at least small snippets or small panels of it, everything that they've been through in those 20 years pretty much. And I hope that we get little, I'm not asking for crazy, individual really long flashbacks like we got for Kawamatsu or something like that, but I'm looking for, I felt more in the moment and more invested in what they're doing in the moment when we got reminders of Oden's flashback through this chapter. So I do want to see more of that going forward. I think next chapter is a great way to highlight that, especially because it looks like the Minks are going to get to shine. So I hope we get some good Inuarashi Nekomamushi interactions, maybe a little snippet of the fallout of, their little conflict from after the Oden death and everything like that. But I'll get to the Minks at the end of the chapter. The point being that I really was invested in what the Scabbards were doing this chapter, and I was hyped for them. I was hyped from the start of this chapter to the end of this chapter. And I guess a couple things that I can clarify here. Let's get this out of the way first. A couple discussions. So, was there a power scaling issue here, right? All of 9 Scabbards pierced Kaido, it looked like. It looked like all of them did. So, I think that, I don't think that there's a power scaling issue here, really. I think the Viz translations will help clarify this. But I think from my understanding, it felt like Kaido's skin was more penetrable than normal because an old trauma was being brought back up. It was kind of an out-of-body moment for him, as he was being pierced by the Scabbards and kind of remembering everything that happened with Oden. And Oda did make a big deal of Kaido kind of questioning what's happening, why am I being pierced and stuff like that. So there is either some sort of psychological explanation for why this is happening, or it's something more mystical, where it's Oden's Ryo, at least in the translation that I read, Oden's Ryo is literally somehow being carried on through the Scabbards, at least in this moment in time. Or it could be something just really straightforward, which is all of the Scabbards have mastered that second level of advanced armament haki that Luffy was working towards mastering to be able to stab Kaido. Right, and if that's the case, I don't even think that's a major power scaling issue, because that's just learning a specific technique that happens to be good against Kaido's scales. It's been established throughout the series that, you can be strong, you can be a lot weaker than someone, but have mastered a haki technique that they have not mastered. I think one of Boa's sisters, Marigold, had even mastered one of the advanced armament haki techniques, and she was extremely weak. She lost to pre-time skip Luffy. So that's not a big deal. I think there's 3 explanations available. I think it's going to get more clarification as we go along, but either it's Kaido is psychologically out of it, that was my feeling right then at the moment, or it was some sort of spiritual situation where Oden's spirit is literally giving the Scabbards strength in that moment, or the Scabbards just have all mastered a very special, very niche technique. That doesn't mean that they're all, Oden level strong, or all even Commander level strong. I think we know that that's not the case. I don't think Raizo is this amazing beast that's been walking around. But I do think that it's very possible that they've all mastered a certain special little skill. It's kind of like how Kinemon has the ability to cut fire that Zoro doesn't have, but there's no way that Kinemon is stronger than Zoro, and I think that's been pretty clearly established so far. So let's set the power scaling stuff aside. I will say that the only thing that, and this isn't a power scaling issue, the only reason that I might not like the fact in retrospect that I'll have to see the fallout of it or whatever, but I did like the fact that Kaido only had one scar on his body so far, and it was only inflicted by Oden. Like, Kaido only had one scar on his body out of all of the fights that he's had in his life and everything like that, so I was looking forward to the moment that he would be finally cut again. So I didn't think that it would happen from, 9 times in a row, basically. I was kind of not expecting that. I thought that the moment that he would end up finally getting scarred or cut again would be something much further along at the very, near the very close of the arc. So that's the only reason, but it's not a power scaling sort of issue. It's kind of a moment that I thought we'd be getting much later, or like, it could be a good moment for Zoro if he's the first person since Oden to have cut Kaido. But I see why it's a good moment for the Scabbards as well. So, makes sense there. And by the way, I also don't want to wave away the power scaling stuff because, power scaling, unlike what some people say, it does matter more than people, like, I think there's a good faction of people who like to say power scaling doesn't matter at all, which makes no sense. Like, part of the reason it's so cool to see all 9 Scabbards facing up against Kaido is because we know Kaido is really strong, that not a single one of them can match up to him. We also know that, the Scabbards differ in strength, and that, it'll be interesting to see what the 9 of them together are able to do against him, but we know that it's not like it's 9 people of literally the same strength level fighting Kaido, right? We know that there's different varying scale amongst the Scabbards as well and such. So that stuff is interesting. That's what creates tension and stakes and stuff like that. So don't, wave away power scaling and say it doesn't matter to the series. It's actually very important to the series. And you have to acknowledge that a clear plot point has been made that Kaido's scales are extremely hard to penetrate, and it is an actual legitimate, plot, difficulty that Luffy has to overcome, which is, okay, I couldn't break Kaido's scales earlier, I have to be able to break his scales at some point. I have to grow and develop to be able to get to that point. So these things do matter. It's important not to be like, oh, the Scabbard's cutting Kaido, you can't argue that that's a problem because of power scaling, and power scaling doesn't matter. Stuff like that does matter. I'm just saying that in this moment, it's not really a power scaling issue, I don't think. And speaking of Luffy, I'll take a moment to just talk about Luffy. Luffy had an amazing moment this chapter, which was when Big Mom is, coming at him and basically saying, were you so stupid as to think that you could come here and defeat Kaido? An amazing Luffy moment to just outright state what I've been hoping that would be openly stated for the longest time, which is basically Luffy saying, no, we came here to beat Kaido, we came here to beat Orochi, we came here to beat you, and pretty much anyone else in your alliance. To me, that basically cements the notion that this is where it's all coming to a head, this long storyline that's been in the works since the start of Fishman Island, right? Facing down Big Mom or declaring war against her at Fishman Island, basically setting off to have war with Kaido at Punk Hazard. Those two storylines building up one at a time, basically parallel since the dawn of the New World, and now officially coming to a head here. And Luffy basically declaring that, this is the stage where I'm going to basically step up and take down to Yonko and everything inside their alliance. So, great moment from Luffy. I am very much looking forward to seeing more interactions between him and Big Mom and him and Kaido, because we got both of those this chapter. I do think that the Kaido-Luffy showdown, I have some new expectations for that around the corner. I'll get to that by the end of the chapter. Quickly touching on Yamato and the others. Good to see Nami taking the initiative to get away, carried along with her. I did like seeing Yamato versus Ulti. I will say Yamato is still one of the big reasons that I feel that the arc is not going to end quite yet here. It feels a little too abrupt. Her storyline was literally just introduced. It feels like there's no way that things can wrap up for her anytime soon. Just the things that she's saying right in this chapter, it's time for me to become Kazuki Oden and stuff. She's got a lot of stuff that needs to be figured out by the end of this arc, and that's not happening in the span of 10, 20 chapters, basically. And I don't know about her versus Ulti. People might be jumping on, okay, Ulti looks like Yamato's matchup for her final matchup, if not here, then at the very end of the arc, her final matchup for the Wano battle. I don't know about that, just because we already got to see Yamato, give Ulti a pretty big... obviously Ulti recovered from it, but the Thunder Bagua early on, I just don't know if Oda would make the final matchup for Yamato against a character that she did already kind of spank once. I know it was a sneak attack and stuff like that, but to me it's just a little odd. It would be if Sanji knocked out Jaibura once earlier in the Enies Lobby arc, and then Jayaburo gets up later, and then they fight again. To me, that's just like a little odd. I do think that this is maybe just a little skirmish for Yamato and Ulti here. If Yamato does get a major fight down the line, I do think it'll be against somebody else. But maybe I'm wrong on that. That's just my feeling. I just don't think Oda would do that, where he has a character take out their main opponent for the arc once earlier on, and then has them have that fight all over again. I don't know. So I think that's just a skirmish. Then the juicy stuff, which was basically the Scabbards and Kaido taking it from the ground level to the dome level. And we got some interesting quotes there. One, well, mostly wrapped up into one quote, but basically Kinemon saying if they die, it's all going to come down to Luffy, and they put their faith into Luffy. Usual stuff, we've seen stuff like this before. I like that Kinemon mentioned the Dawn. That's very interesting to me, because Dawn, it's just going to watch my video on the Dawn of One Piece, but it is a theme that comes up recurringly throughout the series, and it's becoming more and more, I think, it's almost becoming the foundation that the series is built on, or what everything was leading towards. So I definitely recommend checking that out if you haven't already. But here in this context, he's talking about the Dawn in relation to Wano. Now, unless Kinemon knows something we don't, the Dawn in relation to Wano is not the same as the Dawn of the world that the Minks are waiting on. But it is at the same time very possible, being that he is a citizen of Wano, he was a follower of Odin and such, he doesn't know everything about Odin's journey, but he may be more knowledgeable about certain things. Maybe he has the same level of knowledge as the Minks, at least, regarding what the Dawn means. And it's very possible that the Dawn of Wano is very closely related to the Dawn of the world. Or maybe he means that the Straw Hats, in bringing the Dawn of the entire world, will simultaneously bring Dawn to Wano. So very interesting stuff right there. I do hope that we delve more into the idea of what the Dawn really, really means over the course of this arc. The other interesting thing that Kinemon touched on was basically, if we all die here, and that's been something that the Scabbards have been talking about frequently so far. It's just, I think that all 9 Scabbards are going to die here. No, I think that's a little much. I think that would be maybe the most powerful way to do it, but I do hope that Oda has, and I can imagine like some minor storylines that Oda does have planned out for some of the Scabbards. So I don't think all 9 will die, but I think it would be that would be the most powerful move, to kill all 9 of them. But if that's not the case, then even just killing some would be really, really drastic for Oda. I mean, these are characters that have been around for a long time, especially Kinemon. I never thought that there would have been a time that I would be potentially emotional, that I would respect Kinemon to the degree that I do now, and that I would be emotionally invested in whether or not he lives or dies. I do think that for that reason, and the fact that Kinemon has been bringing up the possibility of death repeatedly, I do think that Kinemon, we can potentially just cross him off. I think he is dead. I don't want to just turn this into a theory of which Scabbards I think are going to live or die, but I can see about half going here. I do think that some, if I had to put my money on which ones survive, I think it would be the ones that actually stayed in Wano. So the ones that didn't get pushed forward into the future, the ones that stayed in Wano. That would be my bet. I'm not going to elaborate too much on why that is here, but I do think that Ashura Doji, Denjiro, and Kawamatsu, they have more story to tell. Kiku also possibly, even though she was one of the ones that was pushed forward into the future. But the Minks, Kinemon, Raizo, I don't know. And on the note of the Minks, by the way, first of all, amazing panel. Before I get to the Minks, amazing, what we can expect of them. Amazing panel at the end. Kaido, Moon behind him, Scabbards lined up in front of him. Just a beautiful panel. I thought this whole chapter was kind of, I wish I had better translation, but the whole chapter was beautiful in a way. The flashbacks that were happening, a lot of the quotes that were being thrown around, and then just the sort of framing of what we got at the very end. It feels like this has been a long time coming, this setup, and I'm just excited that we're finally getting to see it. And there's more power to it than I initially thought that there would be, seeing the Scabbards all get to face down Kaido. And as for the setup, let me clarify something I said in the last chapter review of chapter 986, where I mentioned that I don't like team battles as much, and that's still true. I like team battles, by the way, when it's team versus team, but team battles where it's a bunch of protagonists ganging up on one villain, those are usually my least favorite type of fights. That doesn't mean I don't like them on occasion. Like, in this occasion, I do think it's really cool to see the Scabbards taking on Kaido together. I still much prefer 1v1s. Obviously, none of the Scabbards can take Kaido 1v1. Part of the reason I'm more excited about this is because I know it's not the final battle of the arc. Like, if Kaido were to go down with all of the Scabbards attacking him and such, I would feel very sorely disappointed about that. But obviously that's not the case, so I can enjoy it for the novelty it is, which is getting to see a cast of secondary characters take on the big bad antagonist that they've had a long-standing grudge against. I like that. It's a really cool setup, really cool framing, really cool build-up. I enjoy this, right? But with team battles for me in general, a team battle where it's a bunch of protagonists thrown at one big bad, it's never going to feel as powerful or as impactful to me as a 1v1 where it is just a more personal, more raw, more emotionally powerful situation where you see one character struggle against another. Like, I like team battles where it's groups versus one character as a novelty on occasion. It's a cool mix-up. It can provide some cool scenarios. Like, I like the Straw Hats versus Oars. It's a great fight. I like that fight. Is it anything close to Luffy versus Lucci? Is it even possible for it to carry that level of drama and personal antagonism? No, it's not the same. Like, you're never gonna get that level of raw emotion or sense of achievement for that main character in a group battle, because it's just throwing a bunch of main characters together and there's not as much growth possible for each individual. Everybody's gonna get little moments, but you're not as personally invested in any one of their fights. For me, it's just never, there's not as much powerful storytelling to be had in a, like, throw everybody at one guy sort of situation. But that's my clarification on it. I can talk more about it down the line or whatever. It's not like I hate group battles versus one. I like them on occasion. I like the Straw Hats versus the Pacifistas as well. And I like the situation that we're in now. But of course, in like the finale of this arc, I don't care if everybody gets a shot at Kaido earlier on. I personally really need the finale of the arc to come down to Luffy versus Kaido. And I will personally be very disappointed if it comes down to something like Luffy and Kid punching Kaido at the same time. I'll say that right now. Beyond that, what do I think this chapter says about the arc going forward? Because if I were to step back and take a look at the tone, the feeling I got from this chapter overall, which was a very elated, sort of exciting feeling. Maybe it's because the war is starting. It feels like the main characters are all basically popping off. It felt like a very, like, we're gonna win this sort of chapter. Like, the Beast Pirates, the Big Mom Pirates, they don't know what's coming sort of chapter. So it doesn't feel like an impending doom sort of chapter to me. Which, as you all know, I for a long time believed that this whole thing is not going to end well for the protagonists. So this was the first chapter in a long while that's made me almost question that, because it feels as though this is the chapter where everything's all coming together. Obviously the Scabbards have been set up to fail against Kaido, but they've also been set up in a way where Luffy's waiting around the corner for Kaido, so we've almost got that typical setup where, you know, character A, group of characters A in this situation, take their shot at the big bad, they fail, and then Luffy comes in and does what they can't. Similar to, you know, Wiper versus NL, or Law versus Doflamingo, or the Neptune brothers versus Hordy. Like, this stuff happens all the time. It feels like we've got that setup where you've got the group of the island citizens, the Scabbards in this situation, the island's warriors going up against the big bad, and they're not going to succeed, and then it's up to Luffy to do it, right? So it feels like we've got that set up. It does have me almost questioning, is this the end or is this not the end? And part of that part of what goes into that is the Minx situation, where the Minx are actually going to get their Sulong form off. I thought that it was very possible that they would get their Sulong form blocked, because Kaido and Big Mom can both control the weather. And if anything, this seems like the perfect situation for all of the Minx to just go off in Sulong form, or at least the ones that can control it. At the very least, we're going to see Inuarashi and Nekomamushi doing it. So it just seems like everything's sort of coming together. There are still enough loose ends that I feel that cannot be wrapped up in this battle alone, that make me not feel like this is the finale of the arc. Especially, you know, I'm being biased based on how this arc felt, but just a chapter or two chapters back, where Kaido's announcing the new Onigashima initiative, the plan to go after the ancient weapons and stuff, there's enough for me to not be caught up in the moment and still remember that, look, there's still a lot more story to be told in Wano, I believe. I think that this is basically the moment that we're supposed to feel a great degree of success, or mounting success, before everything goes south. think something along the lines of Luffy activating his Conqueror's Haki in Marineford for the first time to get a sort of rejuvenated second big wind to go after Ace and free him, and then leading to, of course, the Plaza situation or the scaffold situation where they got Ace out. Everything seemed good for a little bit. I think we're leading towards something like that. That's the emotion that I felt this chapter. But look, here's the thing. If all of this does not end in failure, I'm fine as long as it's a really, really good finale to the arc. I do feel that failure is necessary, but at the same time, I'm not going to be like, oh, I didn't feel anything this chapter because what I had wanted earlier, which is for everything to go south for the Alliance, hasn't happened yet. I really like this chapter, and I did feel a lot of positivity from this chapter. I felt very excited to read the next chapter. I want to see the Scabbards fight Kaido. I want to see them go down, and then I want to see Luffy take over and fight Kaido. I want to see them make Sulong form. I just think that basically we're set up for a series of really, really good chapters from here to the end of Wano Act 3. So if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you all next week.